Hello and welcome to this little guide on how to get started reading Japanese, because way too often do I see people claiming that you can only start reading once you've already reached an advanced level, or people that try to get into reading but then eventually give up because it's just too difficult and nothing makes sense. Which I don't blame you for, by the way, it is tough. But in this video, I want to address these 2 points and give you some practical advice on how to actually get started. Towards the end of the video, I will also give you some life examples of how I would approach breaking down a sentence and understanding it. Believe it or not, reading is an incredibly powerful activity for learning a language. And no, you do not already have to be at an advanced level to start reading. If anything, the opposite is the truth. You reach an advanced level by reading. But what makes reading such a great activity? Well, there are multiple parts to that answer. Reading a text, whether it is from a textbook, a children's book, a tweet, a text message, or a novel, helps put words and grammar you already know into context. Learning vocabulary from a vocabulary list and studying conjugations is a great first step, but language does not exist in a vacuum. And written texts, to a certain extent, provide a safe environment for you to experience the language in context, to familiarize yourself with how it works, and to maybe see grammar patterns that you may only have seen in your textbook so far. It also helps get used to that feeling of uncertainty when you're not sure what exactly something means. And I say that this happens in a safe environment because, unlike when you go out and try to talk to people or try to listen to something on the radio, you can always read at your own pace. You can always take the time to look up anything you don't understand. When reading, the control is very much in your own hands. Reading is additionally a very language-dense activity. When watching a movie, for example, there's always going to be scenes without any dialogue, which is a good thing, by the way, because imagine watching a movie and one of the characters just wouldn't shut up. But this is obviously very different when reading a book, because when you're reading for 20 minutes, you're coming across language for 20 minutes. My impression is also that with reading, there is less of a chance of you just zoning out and essentially not paying any attention anymore to what's happening, which I feel like can happen fairly easily when you're watching things, especially when you don't understand them. But maybe that's just my impression. What do you think? Finally, because reading is such a language-dense activity and because you have so much control in the process, it becomes really easy to expand your vocabulary and, as I mentioned before, to strengthen the knowledge you already have. I could talk about the benefits of reading for literally hours, but I hope that this made you at least consider adding some reading practice into your study routine. One issue, however, remains. How do you start? When talking to other Japanese learners, it seems like there are, broadly speaking, 2 issues. First, a lot of scary kanji and words that you've never seen in your entire life, making a text wall like this seem like a Mount Everest climb. And second, the confusing Japanese sentence structure on top of the utter lack of spaces in the Japanese language. But don't worry, I'm here to give you some advice. Let's start with the first issue, kanji and unknown words. Luckily, this issue has been solved for the most part thanks to modern technology that allows us to look up things with, at worst, a few clicks or swipes. But that does not mean that you can just go out and read by looking up every single word. I assume you could do that, but that is not advice I would give to you, like, ever. Don't do that. Instead, to get started, it is important to have a base level of knowledge and to then choose material appropriate for your level. Now, appropriate for your level is to a certain extent personal preference. There are some people that don't mind having to look up a few more words, but generally speaking, it is good to read material at a level where you only have to look up a handful of words every once in a while to be able to follow the story. I know a lot of people think that that is too easy or that's below them, but trust me, you're not doing yourself a favor reading something that you can only pick up a few words every once in a while. You're trying to read, you're not playing word salad puzzles. And if you listened to this and thought, wait, so I do have to be pretty advanced after all, Then I'm sorry to disappoint, but there are graded readers that start with literally 2-word sentences. Of course, the higher your base level, the more options become available to you. So, what can we do to increase our base level? Right, we go back to good old studying. Grab yourself a tutor, a textbook, a flashcard, an online class, I don't care, but start by learning new words that way at first. The same goes for kanji study too, by the way. A little bit of practice every day can go a long way. And it will then in turn make your reading easier, which when reading you come across new words, which will then make your studying easier, and that will again make reading easier. You get the idea. Once you start, there's no stopping. Well, that's the first issue solved. What about the second though? Japanese sentence structure can be extremely trippy when you're just starting out, and just learn more grammar is not always helpful advice in my opinion. So here are some practical tips that I learned in my translation class to help you better break down Japanese sentences. Ultimately, of course, you won't have to rely on these strategies anymore because the way Japanese works will just become second nature to you. But until you get to that point, I hope that these tips can help you bridge that gap. Since Japanese doesn't use spaces, you as the reader need to do the work of breaking apart the sentences by yourself. This can seem a little scary at first, but let's go one step at a time. First, if you're dealing with a long paragraph, find the periods and go one sentence at a time. I know this might seem trivial, but your mindset is a big part of it, and I feel like some people get into their heads just a little too much when they see a wall of text. I am some people. So remember, long scary paragraphs are nothing else than a bunch of sentences stuck together. The next thing you want to do is try to separate the sentence into different parts and figure out their function. If you already know some Japanese, you might already know how to do this, but for someone starting out, this can be a pretty difficult task. To do this, first locate the particles. Of course, there is a bunch of them, but the most common ones like ga, wa, no, mo, o, ni, and de are going to be pretty crucial and are going to appear in pretty much every sentence. Once you located the particles, go through each sentence part one by one and look up words you don't know, and then take a mental note of what they do. So here we have Nihon de wa in Japan, natsu demo in summer too, masku the mask as an object because it has an o attached, tsukeru to attach, hito ga people as the subject because there is a ga, oi desu are many. And as a final step, we go to the end of the sentence, because that is where the predicate is in Japanese, and put it all together. There are many. Many what? We need a subject. So we look for a subject. Hito ga, people. There are many people. Then we take one step back, where we have another verb, and in this case, the verb modifies the noun. Because in Japanese, the modifiers always come before the thing that is being modified. And you can often translate it as a relative clause. So in this case, we have people who do something, people who do a verb. The verb is attach. There are many people who attach. Who attach what? We need an object in this case and conveniently have one right there. There are many people who attach masks. Another step back, natsu demo, in the summer too. There are many people who attach masks in the summer too. Then another step back, Nihon de wa in Japan. And we get the sentence, in Japan, there are many people who wear masks in the summer as well. As you learn more words, your reading speed increases and you get more used to how Japanese sentences are essentially just the other way around. You also get better at keeping the different sentence parts in your short-term memory, so that by the time you get to the end of the sentence, everything just falls into place and you don't have to keep going back through the sentence. I know that this is a concern many Japanese learners have, how you have to wait until the end of the sentence to really know what's happening. And all I can really say is that with time, your working memory will get better. With time, you'll be able to understand sentences as units a lot better. And you'll be able to predict what comes at the end of the sentence based on what you've already read, based on the sentence parts you already know, based on the story, and based on the sentences before that. It'll just take a while to wrap your head around it and get used to it, but don't let that discourage you. I hope that this video can help someone get into reading. Let me know if the sentence breakdown was any helpful at all and if you would like to get more examples of that. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. And with that, happy reading!